Welcome to Happy Homes and Gardens. I'm your host. My name is Daphne Royce. I am the real estate broker, architecture, and interior designer. SGNL is a platform that helps people live more fulfilled and fully abundant lives. Jen Randle is the founder and CEO of SGNL. Let's welcome Jen and let her tell us about SGNL and some insights of her services. Hello, Jen.
Hi, Daphne. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored.
Please tell us who you are and what is SGNL.
Sure. Well, I'm Jen Randle. I'm from the Bay Area originally. I currently live on the coast here near Half Moon Bay. And I formed SGNL in 2020, October 2020. So it's been a few years now. And we offer, a series of services, primarily around human experience. And it's everything from supporting individuals in helping them tap into their internal knowing and ability, to helping companies, organizations, and teams really build human experiences that support people who are working in service of a company's broader purpose and mission. And I work with individual leaders as they step into new roles and take on new challenges, helping them think about their leadership, their style, their strategy, helping to think about what their mandate or charter is, and how they could prepare their team to be ready to go and deliver on that agenda.
So what was your background? What did you study at school?
Well, undergrad, I went to Howard University and I was a sociology major. So, from the beginning, I have been, before I even really knew what sociology was, when I was 18, I've just been fascinated with people and institutions and understanding how humans make up institutions and formulate them. And so, everything that I've done has effectively been tied with that thread. That red thread has come through. So I started in nonprofit, went on to business school at Columbia in New York, went into consulting. Obviously, they're very much people services and understanding how to support companies, marketplaces, customers, and consumers. Did innovation consulting, which is really about new products, services, and experiences, and thinking about an ecosystem, human-centered design, and how to really light up an ecosystem in service of solving a need or delivering on a need. And then took that into building out ecosystems in service of purpose. So helping leaders think about, what their purpose is in perpetuity as a company, and then how to then galvanize their people in service of that purpose. And distilled a lot of that experience into then specifically employee experience design, and thinking about, beyond, benefits like, a gym membership, or, your healthcare. What does the life cycle of an employee need to look like? What's the promise that we make to our employees that show up in service of our company? And what's the strategy to deliver on that promise? And so it's just been sort of one thing after another, building and building, to where I really got fascinated with helping individuals think about more broadly their lives, and really understand how they could move through space and place in a way that is rightfully situated or positioned in their power and their confidence of self, and envision futures for themselves that are bold and big and fantastic, and work to manifest those futures, and really think about the systems and structures that get in our way of doing that, and the things that we start to internalize that get in our way and prohibit us or block us from being our greatest, boldest, brightest, shiniest selves. So I've just been sort of building and building and building over these last few decades, and I'm having a lot of fun.
What inspired you to start SGNL, and what does SGNL stand for? And how did you come up with that name?
Yeah. Well, I'll start there. So I used to say, and still says on my LinkedIn, that I, because I've done client services for so long, see myself as really a signal in the noise. There's so much noise that exists out there, right? Whether it's the marketplace, whether it's competing interest, strategic interest or focus, whether it's, the noise of people's perspectives on who we should be or how we should show up. There's just a lot of noise. And I found that I'm oftentimes able to be that signal for folks to hone in on and focus, and help guide them through that next step or through that next part of their journey. So Signal SGNL became the name of the company, just trying to be fancy without vowels. And so that's how we got to Signal. And, I just, to be honest, started the company because it was a natural next step, but wasn't quite sure where it would go. And it took me a couple of years to really feel like there was a there, right? Like there was something meaningful that I could offer that felt differentiated from others in the marketplace. That the approach that I'd take, the way that I do the work, the way I'd partner with clients or with individuals I'm in practice with, was uniquely a different approach. And so it started to coalesce and form to something a little bit more meaningful. But it took me a while. Like I felt like, hey, consulting and client services is a highly commoditized space. There's a lot of voices, a lot of people doing that work in various ways. And so I never wanted to just be contributing to the noise, right? I wanted to be someone that was helping to create clarity. And so felt that until I had something meaningful and differentiated, I didn't want to claim it. But here I am and fully sitting in this work. So, yeah.
You have volunteered in many places in the past. What
Mhm.
is the biggest takeaway from volunteering?
Well, it's interesting, right? We talk a lot about, work-life balance and, you know, being able to do these things, like have a full life. I found, particularly early on in my career, that, I was very service oriented. I started a nonprofit before business school. In college, I was an AmeriCorps member, which is like the domestic Peace Corps. So I did, 900 hours of service over 2 years while I was in undergraduate school. And so service and volunteering have always been a cornerstone of my identity and how I feel like I want to contribute. And I found as I don't know, became more professional, like in the time my time was taxed, it became harder to give a physical service, right? To like paint a building or to like, do a community garden, that kind of thing. And so instead I found that I could contribute my professional skills to a lot of entities. So helping them with strategy, helping them around brand communications, thinking about talent, the things that I like to do and am able to do professionally, I could contribute or volunteer those skills to nonprofits. And so that's really how I've been contributing over these last few years. And then as I moved here to the coast and really settled into my community, I've been trying to think about how to really commit to my community in a more significant way. And so I do volunteering in the same way, but I also, became an elected official here as a way to do that as well, so that I could really be plugged into what's happening here in my town on the coast.
Your website mentioned elements, self-awareness, and rituals. Can you elaborate on each term?
Sure, yeah. So within intrinsic wayfinding, again, this idea that there's a soulful reclamation that's possible to all of us. We live in a society that is very noisy, right? We live in a society that kind of has us disconnected from self and soul. And so intrinsic wayfinding is all about reclaiming that. And there are 3 elements tied to it. So the first is align, and it's aligning our head, our heart, and our gut. So in a society that is very much around intellectualism and high performance, productivity, efficiency, we orient most often to our minds, our heads, the intellectual self, the rational self. And we find that we often are bypassing our heart and our gut as valid signals and valid data to help us make choices. And we are often largely influenced, unduly influenced externally in. So we have a lot of opinions, right? Whether it's receiving promotions, awards, accolades, guidance, right, from other people as signals to us that we're on the right path or that we should make a certain decision. And so align is all about figuring out how we orient between head, heart, and gut, and building harmony and connection with these three elements of self, and really then having that faith in self to guide us. The belief, the fundamental belief that we are come equipped with everything we need to navigate this lifetime, and to then really turn up those voices from within to help us make those choices and to navigate our path. The second element is deliver. And that is really guided by the philosophy or belief that, we are each here meant to contribute something uniquely ours in this lifetime, a gift that we are meant to give. And the reality, again, is that the way society has us sort of bent is that we become further and further removed from that, right? We're guided to go down academic paths or professional paths because those are the rewarding and enriching pathways that everyone should be striving for, but that might not be authentic to us. So it's really figuring out what is our gift and swinging for that, the fences in service of that gift, and working to manifest that gift. And then the third piece is deconstruct. And deconstruct is all about understanding that these constructs that we live within, patriarchy, white supremacy, capitalism, they all are systems that have a very clear agenda. And oftentimes those agendas don't serve us. But what happens is, because these agendas are so present in our lives and our existence, we start to swallow a lot of the messages and the signals and the things that come from those constructs whole. We start to internalize all of these things and start to do a lot of the work of limiting ourselves, playing small, diminishing our power, and living under scarce mindset. And so deconstruct is all about understanding the things that we've internalized and start to dismantle those things so that we can unshackle ourselves from those constructs, those barriers, and live a more liberated existence. And so you can imagine it's not really a linear process between align, deliver, and deconstruct, but it is very much a rinse, wash, repeat kind of thing where, as you are further and more closely aligned and listening to self, you can see more clearly what you're meant to deliver, what your unique gift is. And as you start to aspire towards that gift, you could see how you're getting in your own way and start to deconstruct the things that are inhibiting you from realizing that vision, and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, right? So those are the elements of intrinsic wayfinding. And the way in which that we operate in practice is through deep contemplation. So it's asking ourselves a lot of questions and understanding, where we sit in contemplation against these questions, but then creating rituals that allow us to start to hold space for exploration. So for example, if we are really headstrong, right, and we are really bypassing our hearts and our guts, how do we start, creating space for the relationship to be strengthened between these three elements? So rituals can oftentimes serve as this container for us to bookend this exploration. So a lot of times people will say like, well, I'm afraid of listening to my heart because I don't want to get too emotional. Or if I'm listening to my gut, then, I feel like I will be negative, or I will always be nervous, or these things. So how do we create rituals that allow us to start, contemplate, and stop, and then walk away, right? And do that over time in a way that allows us to feel like we can do this safely without spiraling out of control, if that makes sense.
Thank you for explaining those three elements.
Yeah.
So who benefits from your services?
Anyone benefits. I think it's, if you're a company and you're looking to design an employee experience, or if you're a leader looking to design an employee experience, right, then, we sit in a time where we're very divided, where we don't necessarily operate with any nuance. We're very high level, superficial in terms of how we're speaking with one another, how we're connecting with one another. Yet, we're asking a lot of individuals. We're asking a lot of people to show up and work hard in service of a purpose or a vision or a mission for a company. So the work we do around employee experience design is about providing a container that is strong enough to hold the many employees that you have, and ensure that they're able to bring their gifts into the container and that they can shine and contribute, and that those gifts will be received and not only seen as valuable, but seen as integral to the success of the moment the company finds itself in. And that container can withhold all of that brilliance, right? So that's something that we all need. We all deserve to work in a place and contribute in an environment where we're valued and our contributions matter. And we all benefit from that being our reality. So that seems like worthy work for anybody, right? If you're a leader and you're wanting to affect significant change and you're wanting to build a meaningful team in service of an agenda, a bold agenda that you're envisioning, it's important that you're not only thinking about sort of the expectations that you're setting for your team, but also, how you're showing up as a leader and how you're showing up in a moment to affect significant change or transformation, and the impact of your actions, because it's not enough to think about intentionally what we're doing. It's also important to understand, for the myriad of people who are working in service of your vision, how your actions are showing up or landing at their feet. And it's also important to ensure that as you're setting this great vision, you're setting your team up for success, that you're thinking about their bench strength, right? And where they need to be future-proofed, and where there are gaps in your team, and where you could actually add folks in that need to be at the table as a part of this first team you're building, to deliver on your agenda. And if you're an individual and you're at a point in your life where you've had some amazing successes and you're on a path, but you feel like maybe the path you've been on has led you to a place you don't quite recognize. Maybe you don't quite recognize yourself in your journey or in your life. Maybe you're feeling like you're ready for that next big jump forward. Then, figuring out how to turn inward and really listen to yourself and really connect to your own internal knowing, is also an opportunity that makes, intrinsic wayfinding maybe the right thing for you to practice. So it really is for anybody. And it's for folks who really are prepared to do the work, because it's not easy, but it's worthy work, and it's valuable work.
Do you service kids or teenagers?
I've worked with folks that have children. Like, I've worked in practice with like a parent and their child, as they work to, think about their relationship and how to understand each other more. But I haven't really done a lot of work as of late with children and kids. It's all mostly adults. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And on your website, I found the term intuitive reset. Can you share more of this?
Yeah. I mentioned earlier that there's, in our society, we really value an over-index on the rational self, the intellectual self, right? So we want a lot of data. We want, footnotes and references and all of these things before we make decisions. And we oftentimes devalue, intuition. So we think about it as like butterflies in our stomach, or nervous energy, or stomach tied up in knots. Or if someone says, I feel, well, I feel is definitely less than I think, right? I think is valued more. And the reality is that our hearts and our guts are actually very primed to provide us a lot of data, and our guts and in our intuition particularly are things that instinctively we react to. Those moments where when we don't think and we just do are often when we're really aligned and we allow our intuition and our guts to play an equal role as our minds. And so it's starting to build the trust and resetting our relationship to our intuition, and knowing that there's value there. There's opportunity there, that we're leaving money on the table, if you will, by not listening to our intuition, because it knows more than we can really understand, or that we can necessarily like document with data. But it carries all of our experiences, and not only our experiences, but the experiences generationally before us, right? There's so much knowledge that sits in our intuition, but it takes time, we need to reset it in the same way that we think about, sometimes when our phones start acting up, like resetting it back to the factory settings, right? Getting back to, how we were meant to operate before we got unduly influenced by all the noise.
How about True North strategies?
True North strategy, yeah. So, as I mentioned before, a lot of times there are leaders that are stepping into new roles. So, for example, one of the folks that I am in work practice with right now is now a recent CEO stepping into a company that has been, I'll use the word, in turmoil for some time, but is seen as a growth company for the broader set of portfolio companies it sits within. And this person is stepping in as a very different leader than their predecessors, for many reasons, not just how they envision the opportunity for this company, but also just their identities are very different than their predecessors. And so it's helping to think about, yes, you've got the business side of this sorted, but how do you tell that story? How do you talk about the strategy in a way that creates clarity and alignment and deep understanding, not just of the direction of where the company is going, but what it means for me as an individual in this company as a contributor. And then also helping the leader think about, from day one, how do I show up in a way that builds confidence and trust? How do I build belief in my vision and leadership? And how do I help signal that this is a very different reality for this company than what they've known, right? In a way that builds a sandbox that feels exciting, and one in which that people want to play in and want to contribute and build their sandcastles in, but also in a way that signals to folks who don't need to be here that maybe this is no longer for them, that what we were before and what you might have valued about what we were before is not who we are going forward. And so maybe it's time for you to go, right? So having that clarity, and then also thinking about, based on that, like, first team notion, the people that you need around you that you're sitting in circle with to deliver on this vision. How do you look at that first team and assess, do we have all the right skill sets? Do we have everyone we need in this moment in order to do the thing that we're setting out to do? And if not, how do we find that talent? Or how do we bolster the talent that we have so that they're really prepared to go out and do what we need them to do? And so working with leaders around all of those elements to help them really step into and guide folks into the path, because the journey is not an easy, linear, flat walk in the park, right? It's going to be quite the hike. And so the goal is to get people on the path with that leader and help them stay there, and feel like this hike is worthy work, that they're signing up for and are excited by.
I love your services. And do you provide in-person or virtual services to people?
Both. Yeah, both. It depends on the nature of the work. So, one-to-one, I work with folks both virtually and in person. I mean, I'm lucky enough to work in practice with folks that don't live right here. So, we have no choice but to be virtual. But I also create what we call gatherings, which are community events or moments where we bring people together to sit and practice with one another. And so we do that in person. And then a lot of the work that I do around True North and in employee experience or human experience design is in a mix of virtual and in person, right? So it just depends on the scope and breadth of the work that we're engaged in.
Are your services affordable?
I hope so. No, but yeah, it depends on the offering and what you're engaging. On the individual level, I work very hard to honor where the person is sitting in that moment, right? So I work with folks who are entrepreneurs of nonprofits, all the way to like tech startups, to people who sit in corporate entities, right? So it's a sliding scale, right? And I really want to honor where people are, because it's about, honoring my labor, but honoring also that their labor, right? And their commitment to their journey and their work. So we figure that out. And that's true also for all of the work that I do with clients and folks I'm in practice with. I don't have a menu or an a la carte. So it's really on a bespoke nature. Like, what is the challenge that we're addressing together, and what's the work that's required, and then how do we scope it accordingly and price it so that it makes sense for everyone involved. Um, I really don't believe in transactions. I really believe in building long-term relationships. And not to say that someone needs to work with me forever, because I don't want that. That's not the intention. But I'm honored that I think most of the people that I work with, I've known for years on and off, have worked with them on and off for years, or have developed friendships with. So it's about the human connection and the work we get to do together in that spirit that I prioritize.
What is your website and how can people contact you?
Yeah, so it's signaladvisory.com. So SGNL advisory.com is the website. And we also have intrinsic wayfinding.com as well. So those are two places that you can find our work and find us and connect with us, should you be interested.
Are most of your clientele in San Francisco Bay Area, or you actually throughout California or other parts of the country?
Other parts of the country, other parts of the world. Yeah. So we're global, and I think that's important, just because, there's so many people. There's what, over 8 billion people in the world, right? There are a lot of folks that we have the opportunity to sit in community practice with. So we're not limiting ourselves to any specific geography.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Jen, for your time. That was
Yeah.
very informative information for my listeners.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been an honor.
Thank you.